Okay. Yeah. So thanks everyone for joining this session. I really appreciate that. And thanks everyone who purchased this book. It really meant a lot for me. The session agenda is pretty simple. I just want to answer any question if you guys have related to this book or any question related to the DevOps interview. So this session is all about that. So I will just go through this really quickly. I just prepared a few slides, and after that we get into the real meat of it, like if you have any question related to this. So let's get started. So yeah, thanks once again for joining this session. Uh, I will get really jumped into this a little bit about me. I'm Prashant. Some of you guys know me. I have been in this field for close to 17 years now. I wear the lot of hats, not this one, but lots of other hats. I started my career when it was not even called DevOps. It was all called system administrator, and then looked into the various roles from system side to even to the managerial role. So this is just all about my experience related to this field. Like whatever you said, whatever the field it is right now, it is supposed to be quite different 17 years back, but now a lot of things changed. So we are going to do all those things in this. So why I wrote this book? So one of the main reason which I find it out, like there's a gap. So if you look at the different fields, for example, the field of like coding and all those, there are lot and lots of books available. So for example, in coding, you have a DSA round, and there's a book available related to that. Similarly, you have a system design round, but there's no book specific to DevOps which is available right now in the market. So whatever we said that DevOps is not related to tools, unfortunately, at the end of the day, there are lots and lots of tools which we need to deal on our day-to-day basis. It can be your Jenkins, it can be your AWS. I will not say it's a tool, but those are the things which we need to deal on the day-to-day basis. So I will just give you guys a sneak peek of what this book is. Second, I have, and when you don't want your, okay, I will share it. So basically, I divided the book into 11 different sections, and each section, except for the last two, is having a two different, have a 10 different questions. So one of the other gaps which I have seen is like most of the time, most of the questions which is floating around the market is related to, for example, a simple question is what is Linux? Unfortunately, I have never seen in the DevOps interview they have asked these kind of a question. Most of the question is related to based on your experience, or most of is why these things work versus why don't this thing don't work. So, for example, like one of the questions which I have shared is like, uh, the interviewer might ask you like, why you want to use EC2 for this particular project versus serverless. So those are the type of question they normally ask. I have never seen nowadays that they are asking you a straightforward question like, what is this X is all about? So basically, most of the question is related to like why this thing is and why this thing is not, rather than having like question related to like what is this X versus what is this X is not about. So that is one of the main reason which why I wrote this book. And the second thing is most of you guys you are already. Let's talk a little bit about the interview process, what the interview process is all about, and how they. I mean, how you guys may prepare for that. So generally, based on in my experience for all the DevOps field, this is just based on my experience. So your experience might differ. There are like 7 rounds, and most of you guys know that this always start with a call from a HR. Um, I'm in US right now, so here, I mean, not to say, but most of the time they send out an email. They secure some time with you to go over the requirement and everything, and then you will proceed it further. The first round is mostly related to what I say that I divided this into two halves. One is this all this FANG based company like Facebook, Google, and everything, and then we have the startups, and then we have all the bunch of other companies. So most of the time in FANG based company, it is like you have to go through their DSA. They will give you one coding problem which you need to solve it. It may be on the hacker rank or in any other platform. They give you like 1 hour to solve that problem. You can do it anytime, and then they will proceed it further depending upon your answer. In other companies, it might be a round from the hiring team who is going to test your knowledge in different fields of DevOps. So it is mostly related to starting from Linux all the way to the CI/CD process. They just want to see if you have the experience for the based on the current role. And if you are able to qualify this round, depending upon the company, they might take one more telephonic round or one more. They may give you one more problem to solve, or they may invite you directly to their uh, their office for the next round of interview. And most of the cases which I have faced is like there's like 5 round, four technical and one technical and non-technical or HR round. Where exactly in the last round, you as you know, it's a kind of a cultural fit. Now, what are the other 4 rounds? So, other 4 rounds is basically the first round in most of the cases, which I feel is from the team who is hiring you, and it involved either coding or it may involve to see you if you are fit for. I mean, if you know the things which they want to hire you. Okay, so for example, in case of let's say in the if you're giving an interview for AWS and they're hiring you for the IAM team, they might ask you a question related to like all the IAMs, which IAM or uh, if AWS integration with all the other services, like for example, uh, the Windows-based AD and all those things. So that is how the whole round goes. The second round, again, it's FANG versus the non-FANG. Where I have seen is related to Linux, where they want to ask you mostly the Linux internal stuff. So how the memory management works, how CPU interact, how the IO thing happen. So everything related to Linux internal. So for example, how the interaction between the user space and the kernel space happen. So all these related, they just want to check your internal depth of how you understand those processes. So in one of the problem that I have shared is, for example, uh, they might ask you, for example, I can tell you based on my experience when I was in Red Hat, we used to ask people, what is your favorite command? And what do you think what will happen when you type ls on the terminal? I mean, ls, I'm just giving an example, any command, for example, pwd or whatever will be your favorite command. What do you think what will be the series of steps which happen when you type that command to a terminal? So these are the type of question which we want to see, like how much a candidate want to go into the depth of that particular process. Similarly, there's one really popular question like how Linux boot process work. And the reason for asking that question because that covers a lot of things, starting from like for example from the hardware level all the way up to the system boots up to. So nowadays they are asking more and more about the system lead. So these are the things they want to test your knowledge. Again, after that, once you clear those second 2 rounds, there are one more round. It may be related to coding again. Okay, and unfortunately, still world is stuck with the lead code. So they might ask you question related to lead code and all those things. So be prepared for that. And then again, it depends upon FANG versus non-FANG. So in FANG, they mostly the next round, the fourth round is related to system design, which unfortunately I believe is the most useless kind of a round because in 45 minutes you cannot design any system. That's for sure. Not even a part of a system. And based on my experience, what I have seen is like the interviewer only want to hear the thing which they want to hear. So, for example, if they ask you to design a Facebook feed or to design, for example, a Google search engine, uh, you may have worked on those kind of a project or you may not. So similar to like DSA question, if you know those things, you will be able to clear those. Otherwise, you just need to memorize a lot and lot of things, and then only you will be able to get into that. And unfortunately, very rarely you use those concepts in your day-to-day work. You may, like for example, for the start of the project, you may need to involve all those things, but those kind of a things you need to design when you reach up to the architect level, that you need to design the whole system from scratch. So system design, I still feel it's not worth, but the more useful round in that case, it may be they may ask you which project you have worked, which that is what I used to ask most of the interviewer, interviewee, and ask them like which project they have worked and share their experience, rather than me asking them to design, like for example, Instagram, or to design like next Twitter. So these are one thing. Just to be clear, in this book, I have not covered any DSA or anything related to system design, because that's what I said. There are lots and lots of books available in the market related to those, but they are not much stuff related to DevOps. So in this book, I have covered something related to shell scripting, which you may use in your day-to-day work, and similarly something for Python for DevOps, not related to DSA, like reverse a number or design Fibonacci series, not those kind of questions or linked lists. Whatever the concept we use in our day-to-day DevOps work, I covered in this book. Okay. And book content, I just quickly want to go over it. So this is how the book look like. You may have got the PDF version for that, so it might look different. So like I mentioned, the entire book is covered into like 11 different sections, and each section covered 10 different questions which you might encounter during the interview, or this may be useful in your day-to-day work. So I try to refrain any question. Yeah, Charan, just I'm able to just give me a few more minutes. I'm just quickly skim over it, and then I will take any question. So I try to refrain any question related to, like, for example, the direct question which no one asked you during the call, during the interview. Like, for example, like I mentioned, what happened when you type your favorite command? So these type of questions which you encounter into a day-to-day work or during the interview, similar to there's a 10 question related to like Git. So how to resolve a merge conflict. This is one thing which you encounter in your day-to-day work. And if you are working on the DevOps field, you definitely encounter these kind of a things. Charan, if you can put your mic on mute. Yeah, thank you. Similarly, the topics related to Docker, Kubernetes, Terraform, and once again, I try to cover as much as like how to handle Terraform dependency, like all those things which you encounter in your day-to-day work. Similarly, shell scripting, Python, AWS, Jenkins, whatever the standard tool you use in your DevOps work. And then like last section is like divided into five questions. So 5 questions related to Ansible and 5 questions related to monitoring, because I want to wrap up this book with something which you may encounter. I agree it does not cover each and every topic, but I try to cover most of the topics which is the part of our DevOps workflow. And unfortunately, whatever we said, we need to stick to most of these tools. So, and then there's a 4 different project which you can try in your day-to-day work. So, for example, if you are trying to push any image to your Docker registry, most of you guys have follow like some kind of a scanning before pushing that image to the Docker hub or whatever be their private registry. So, how to scan those image before pushing it to the to those endpoints? The complete CI/CD pipeline using all these tools. Like this is a general workflow which most of the people follow, like pushing your code to GitHub, then using Jenkins and Maven to build that project, creating a Docker image out of it, then do the Sonar Cube to check for any vulnerability, and then pushing that image to Kubernetes using Argo CD. So how to build that? And most of the places where I feel like most of the people, they are replacing Jenkins with GitHub Actions. So I mean, please feel free to modify this project based on GitHub Action. And I already gave you an example how to use it with GitHub Action, like in here. Similarly, how to deploy your Terraform code using Jenkins. And finally, just to give you like how to build a CI/CD pipeline using all the AWS constructs. So if you are using all these AWS constructs, how to deploy your code to your EKS cluster using this whole pipeline. So basically, the idea is these tools, these projects will give you some hands-on experience, uh, how a real DevOps project look like, how you are building the like the moment you are going to get the code from developers up to way how you're going to deploy it to your cluster. And finally, there's a small topic related to like 12 uh, prompt related to chat GPT, like how you can enhance your day-to-day work using chat GPT prompts. So some sneak peek of that. So yeah, I mean, that is all about this book content. Like I mentioned, interview question, we have just skimmed over it. And this book is available. So if you guys want to purchase it, it's available in this link. I can post it here. Yeah. So I mean, this uh, this webinar is not about like promoting this book. It's I know it's a byproduct, but if you guys have any question related to the book or any question related to the DevOps interview process, this is the time you can ask any question right now. Anyone? If you want to type your question here in the chat, please feel free to do that.
Hi,
Hi,
Prashant.
Prashant. Jadi.
Is this book available on different website, Amazon or an e-commerce platform?
No, Jadip. Right now, it's only available on Gumroad. That's the only place where I have published, but I have plans to publish it on Kindle Store also.
Oh, okay, Prashant.
Yeah, thanks, Jadip. Uh, Ishwak, it's already on the lowest possible promo value, so I haven't thought about the promo code, but maybe in future, but not at this stage. Nihaz, so it's online. So the moment you checked out, it's immediately available.
Okay.
Any other question, not related to the book, but any DevOps related, any interview related, which you want to ask, and please feel free to do that.
Hi, sir. Uh,
Please.
I purchased your book. It is too good. So actually, I have a question related to CACD.
Mhm,
So basically, once we commit once the developer commits the code to the GitHub or Bitbucket,
mhm.
any version control system, so Jenkins will trigger the build right using webhook.
Mhm.
So the thing is, I some people are saying, I have a confusion that which stage will come first, like Sonar Cube analysis or Maven stage. Some people are following Maven, some people are following the Sonar Cube.
So, Sai, thanks for this great question. It all depends. So basically, some people, they used to build the artifacts first, and then only they will do the static code analysis using SonarQube. Some people, they want to do it like first try to scan the code to see any vulnerability or if it's not following some standard, and then only they want to build a Docker image, for example, in this case, out of it. So it's completely depend upon your company workflow, which one they are following. I have seen both of them in practice, but the honest answer is like uh, it depend upon your workflow, whatever your company is following. The other thing which I mentioned, most of the people they are replacing Jenkins with the GitHub Action. Even uh, in my experience, people are doing it. The only catch with that is like GitHub Action after a certain limit it is paid. So be mindful for that. That because GitHub in the backend they are spinning up a container or a, I don't know, it's a virtual machine behind the scene. So after a certain limit, you need to pay to GitHub to have those action enabled or to have those action triggered. So hopefully I answer your question, but yeah, simple
Yeah.
answer is it depend upon your workflow. Yeah, Garvit has a question. I had a question. Garvit, what I believe that once you know one cloud platform, you should be able to translate that knowledge to other platform also. So basically, for example, simple thing is like in AWS it is called EC2, in Azure or GCP it may call something else. I don't know. So uh, the thing is like, uh, for example, in my case, I always work on AWS. Like in last 12 years, I'm working on the AWS. So I'm pretty much comfortable with that. But I am pretty much sure that I'm able to translate that knowledge to any other cloud platform. So it depends. Few companies they want you to be specific to that particular cloud. So for example, if you are applying for the cloud engineering position in AWS itself or DevOps position, they definitely want you to know AWS. They are not going to teach you from scratch. But if you're applying for some other companies where they think that you are pretty good in one technology and you are able to pick up in some other technology, please feel free to do that. But again, I'm just talking in terms of like, again, if you're applying in Google, they they might consider you if you know about it, Google Cloud, but it's always an extra advantage. But rest of the thing, I think so. I think that you should be able to apply for those companies. But again, you know how this whole thing works. The HR need to see your resume or they need to filter your resume and then only you will go through it, right? So if they don't see you have a knowledge of Azure, uh, definitely your resume will be filtered at this stage. So yeah, there is no hard and fast rule that you should not apply for those positions. Fernando, you have a question?
Uh, Prashant, hi, my
Yeah,
name is Nihas and I have a question.
yeah.
Yeah, Prashant, I am one of the following person which is always following your blogs. And my question is like, I am almost at 12.5 years experience. I started with infrastructure admin as Linux and Windows admin and worked in AWS and GCP and multiple DevOps tools. But the problem which I lack is like I don't have the exposure in Kubernetes or Docker containerization part. So currently, I am looking for an immediate joining or immediate job looking. So this backlifts lightly in my interviews because as you know, most of the companies nowadays asking for the containerization part. So how can we tackle that? Because other areas are okay, but they tell you okay, you don't have exposure to Docker or Kubernetes, then it is backstepping it slightly.
Yeah, so one thing which I mentioned few days back in my blog post also, uh, I have seen that people who don't know about a certain technology, they start going towards like most of these uh, like certifications, which is good up to some extent. But I feel that over certifications are kind of a kill. In your case,
Correct.
I will say
Correct.
at least go with the CK exam, Certified Kubernetes Administration. Uh, the problem is that that is at least give you a holistic overview of like what Kubernetes will look like, and you should have some knowledge of Docker on the top of it. But uh, to be honestly, to tell you, like I'm using Kubernetes from last 4 years, and most of the places where I worked or where I have done the consulting, uh, people are not going with the vanilla installation of Kubernetes. Vanilla means installing on your physical hardware. Most of the places they are either going with the managed solution, for example, EKS, AWS EKS, or some kind of a managed solution. I don't know, but mostly I have worked on EKS. So once you start working, it's a completely different ball game. But I will say specifically for Docker and Kubernetes, I will definitely recommend CKA because it's a hands-on exam, and it will give you a lots of overview about how the Kubernetes different things work. But be prepared for that in your company. You might need to go, I mean, whatever company you're going to work, it's you might need to work some managed solution, which is a different picture. But all the basic concept under the hood will remain the same.
Okay. Yeah, got it. Thank you.
Sure. So I will first go with Fernando question. I bought your book and it's awesome. Yeah, thanks, Fernando. Something that I can find, it's a recurrent question in the interviews about release techniques. So release technique you are talking about in terms of GitHub releases, or what exactly? It's like a blue-green kind of a deployment or canary kind of a deployment? If you can clarify your question, Fernando. Jaideep, are the questions we have discussed in our previous session, 100 days of interview, is also included? Jaideep, I tried to include some of those questions, but not all. This is more of a like a, if uh, this book is not going to help you uh, for the interview, which I believe not. It's going to help you for your interview, but at the same time, it's going to help you what you are doing in your day-to-day work. Okay, so it's definitely going to enhance your knowledge. And to be honest with you, the whole world is going towards the ML side now. So that's why I try to introduce a section for ChatGPT where I put some prompts which help you in your day-to-day work also. So yeah, so book is, I have included some of those questions related to that previous session, but mostly they are new questions related to all which is asked during the interview. But definitely, I have not included anything like what is Linux. I gave you some introduction related to those, but not that's what I'm saying. In none of the job interview that I have faced, they're asking all these that kind of a question. They ask you some scenario based question. Next question, Navita. If we have 100 seconds of microservice to be installed, how do we create Helm chart and what do you consider while creating it? So, I mean, Navita, it's nothing to do with like hundreds of microservices or thousands of microservices. Helm chart creation has always been the same. What you think on the system side is like how you are going to manage the master plane versus the like a control plane. So uh, I don't think so. That question is related to. I mean, Helm chart deployment has always been the same. It's always been on the system side because if your system need to handle hundred of these pods, then your consideration should be completely different. And one thing, if these kind of a question asked during the interview, that's what even I have mentioned in the books also. Try to get as much information as possible from the interviewer. One of the things which I personally don't like is like when I ask any question to the interviews. For example, I am interviewing you, and um, people spend like one of the person who asked me like, "Can I take 5 minutes?" That is your time. Don't waste your time thinking about 5 minutes. You might think for a few seconds, but don't take too much time. The interviewer might not like you. So try to ask as many questions. For example, in this case, you will ask him like hundreds of microservices. So is there all these microservices, they are different? For example, one is the front end, back end, or database, or they all are same. What should be the my cluster type? It's a managed cluster or unmanaged cluster. So all these information will be helpful for you. Then you can define all the service definition, everything. So Helm chart side, it will be the same, but all the other construct related to this your system, that might be a different. Okay, but if you have any other, I mean, you can ask any follow-up question if you have. Okay. Fernando, I'm still waiting for you. Like release techniques. What do you mean by release techniques? Or you are asking about the GitHub workflow? Okay. How do you write manifest file if we have different microservices? So yeah, I mean, writing a manifest file, like I said, in manifest file, you are not relying on the different services. It microservices. It might be written on it might be written on Java. It might be written on Go. What you are doing in manifest file is like you are going to consume those services. So in manifest file, you are going to define like, okay, for this particular pod, I am going to take a Docker image, which is which has already been built. So there is no difference in terms of that. It's only that when they are going to communicate with each other, you need to define a service definition. And that service definition will allow how those microservices going to talk to each other. So once again, writing in terms of Helm chart is not going to make a difference. It's only going to make a difference how you're going to deploy it. And that work is being done prior to that. So for example, if you have a Java-based microservice, you are going to write a Docker file, which is going to create a image out of it. And then you are just going to use that image in your Kubernetes manifest file. Okay. So Fernando, I think they most talk about lease software or infrastructure technique like blue, green, canary, etc. Yeah. So yeah, Fernando. Yeah, this is one of the standard question they asked. So for example, a kind of a blue, green kind of a deployment or canary. So basically, canary means uh, out of like let's say you have a version one release of something of your product and you are releasing some new feature. So you want to roll out into 10% of your in your cluster. And for some new users, you are going to redirect that traffic to those 10% of the users. So yes, I mean, those are just standard practice that everyone is following. So uh, I mean, it's just that you need to read it or you need to implement it in your system, and then you will see like what technique which will work for your environment. So I don't know. I mean, they will not ask you to implement it during the interview, but most of the time, these are all the standard thing which most of the people they are following in their DevOps practice or in their workflow. Any other question or any other follow-up question? Yeah, Garvit, that's a great question. That's what I told you. Like most of the uh, internet, they are filled with all these questions related to, and the question which you are asking related to like tools like Kafka, Redis, they come into picture when you are going to do the system design. And one book which I can highly recommend is a book by Alex Hu. You don't need to read any other book. That's what I always follow. I can ping you guys the link. Most of you, I think you guys are aware of this book. It has two edition, one and two. If you are going with any other book, it's just a waste of time or any other. I mean, I'm not saying that you cannot go for any other courses or anything, but uh, wherever you're getting a knowledge, it's fine. Like you're getting a knowledge from me or you're getting a knowledge from anyone else, go for it. But if I will ask you, I will definitely recommend this book. This will cover most of the topic related to system design. But again, I have the problem with the system design, like I mentioned earlier. I want during the interviewer to ask me a question, the project which I have worked on, rather than the question which, for example, I cannot ask people to design like something X which I have worked on. Rather than I will ask you to design, for example, if you have experience in Kafka or Redis, I will ask you to design some kind of a workflow. But to answer your question, Garvit, if you have time, just go through this book. This will cover a lot of things, cover a lot of topics. Any other question? Okay, Navita. Yeah, that's a great question. Role in releasing an application. So, Navita, I can tell you based on my experience. Again, this is not set out on stone. It depend upon company to company. So, for example, in one of the startup that I've earlier worked, my team used to do all the things. So we used to manage their. It's like way back in 2010, 11. We used to manage their SVN and Git system, and we are responsible for Jenkins also, and we are responsible for creating the RPM. At that time, it's like RPM. There was no concept of Docker, and once the RPM is built, we used to hand it over to one of the, like, nowadays they are called it a SRE team, and SRE team is responsible for deploying those packages. But in case if there's any bug, we my team is responsible for creating the patch for that or creating a new RPM. So that's the whole different story. But when you work for some big companies, they usually have different teams for that purpose. So, for example, they have a dedicated team who is handling your Git or GitHub or whatever be your enterprise application. They have a different team who's managing your Jenkins, different team who's building the package, and different team who's deploying that package. So, DevOps engineer role, I cannot say that in one company which fits all. It depends upon company to company. So if you're working for some startup, you might be responsible for end-to-end workflow, all the way to deploying the package in your Kubernetes cluster on your or your virtual machines, wherever it is going. Uh, yeah, or if you're working for some big companies, they might have a dedicated team which is responsible for this each and every steps. So I have seen a companies where they even have a dedicated team for SonarQube. They have a dedicated team just for doing the scanning for your images before it's been pushed to your local registry. So it's all depend where you are working, and uh, I cannot say general. So as we set up a CD pipeline already in one click, we do deploy the application once everything is ready. So that's again, it's depend if you are deploying in non-prod versus the prod, right? Prod, definitely, I will never ever deploy it like one click. I always want someone to verify it, even if it's go through the in the non-prod environment. In my case, I always put a check, like, okay, if this went well, a second pair of eyes will always be there to verify it, and then only it will be deployed to production. So yeah, again, what you are saying, it depends. So if you are responsible for managing end to end, yes, you are responsible for that. But if there's some other team who's responsible for that, like in most of the case in production, it's a SRE team, site reliability engineering. So they are responsible for deploying the system. And again, all these terms like site reliability engineering, platform engineering, even this DevOps engineering, I think it's a kind of a buzzword, uh, which unfortunately, which is floating from here from this Bay Area. Some companies come up with these buzzword words and they are floating it. So yeah, it's difficult to differentiate all these things, but basically the work of a DevOps engineers change a lot. Uh, Here in I can tell you in Bay Area, uh, if you don't know the coding, it's pretty difficult to get into the DevOps role. They definitely wants you to at least know one programming language, and programming I means Python. Uh, in most of the cases nowadays, most of the company they are moving towards the Go. So if you know Go, then it is great. If interviewer asks if you have deployed apps in production environment, uh, that's what I told you. Most of the time, they don't ask you all these straightforward question, but deployed apps in production, that's kind of a diplomatic answer. You can put it in that way that your team, if you have deployed it, then well, it is good. If you are not, you will say that in my company we have a SRE team who is responsible for deploying those images or apps. So it's totally depend, right? I cannot say like, okay, I always, I I'm not sure they are going to impress if you will say that if you haven't deployed and you say that you have deployed that image, because then their expectation is what are the issues. Like if I'm the interviewer, I will be interested to know like what are the issues or challenges that you have faced once you deployed in production, and what is your. I always want to see what is my rollback strategy. So in case if something goes south, how can I am going to roll back those changes? So those might be the follow-up question. Okay. Any other question? Yeah, these are all great question. I know most of the people we face these kind of a challenges, and only way we knows about this is like, could you answer that? Yeah. I mean, in production, I can't say that what are the things that we have faced. So, for example, if you are, I can give you a simple example of like Kubernetes. So, Kubernetes, you have the process of called rollback, right? So, if you deployed like version V2, and if something goes bad with that version, for example, your environment goes down, so you always have an option of rollback to version V1, right? So those are the things which you can do. So that's what I said. Even this is just one example, but I always want to make sure we have a rollback plan. Even if you are 100% confident that this will go through, I can tell you, based on my experience last week, we are trying to increase the IOPS in production for IO2 based volume, and we are 100% sure that there will be a no downtime. But always want to have a rollback plan in place to make sure that if something goes bad, how it will be. So if you check with AWS team, they will say go for it. There will be a no downtime. But I have seen that when it is doing the IO increase, or sorry, that was the case when we are trying to change the volume from IO1 to IO2. So in that case, there is definitely a slowness which has been introduced. So that caused some kind of a customer churn. So that's what I'm saying. Even if you are not 100%, 200% sure, if you are doing that activity in production, because I know based on my experience of 17 years, there is no way to actually replicate the production load in dev or test environment. So always have your rollback plan ready. And I mean, we are living in 2024, right? So look at Amazon. They are giving like 11 nines of durability for S3. So in millions of objects, there is only one object which will be lost. So always have those things in your mind, and always get it reviewed from some of your team members, so that in case if you miss something, they should be able to review it and give you some guidance or hint. Uh, what is the day-to-day responsibility of a DevOps engineer with 1 year of experience? Uh, Vikash, I don't want to give you a sugar-coated answer, but the simple thing is, for me, 1 year of experience is not for a DevOps kind of a role. I know that is DevOps is just a kind of a marketing term, which I think, but DevOps is like it consists of lot and lot of things. So, I mean, this is something sound harsh, but at least I am not going to hire someone with 1 year of experience with DevOps, because they need to deal with a lot and lot of things. And again, in startups, they might hire you or hire that person, but you need to fall. You need to, like I mentioned earlier, you need to have to know end to end, like all the tools which I have mentioned in the book. I think it is lot to be swallowed by a person with 1 year of experience. So I'm not saying people will not shine in those kind of a role, or the person with 1 year of experience has anything wrong, but it's just too much to take from that one person. Like designing this end-to-end workflow, it might be difficult for that guy. So yes. How to tackle the Kubernetes troubleshooting scenario-based question? So Jaideep, it's all depend upon like what type of Kubernetes troubleshooting it will be. Most of the cases, for example, EKS, right? EKS, I always recommend to have it integrated with CloudWatch inside. CloudWatch inside is going to little bit expensive, but it will give you a drill down vision of all your pods which is running in your cluster, it will give you logs, it will give you all the information like CPU, memory utilization, all those things. So first thing that must need to be enabled in case of EKS where I am working. Secondly, you should have, if you don't have the CloudWatch inside, your logs must be flowing to some other tools like Splunk, Elasticsearch, where you can view or monitor those logs. Um, I know most of the people, they recommend you go with the kubectl logs or kubectl describe command. But trust me, for example, in my case, I'm dealing with like 30,000 pods. So it is almost next to impossible for me to run those commands, right? And to get that information. And honestly, in most of, I don't know, but in most of the production scenario which I have worked, I do not get access to the servers. It's just only the break class kind of scenario where we get access to the servers. So we cannot run those commands like kubectl logs or kubectl describe to debug those, right? So I will say, like, for troubleshooting, uh, don't rely on running those commands. Even I see lot of blogs where people say run this command kubectl get or all those. Most of the time we have some kind of a UI based tool. For example, K9S is one great example where you just need to type like press D and it will describe the pod for you. So don't go on memorizing all those commands, just relying on all the monitoring and the logging mechanism you have in place to debug your Kubernetes issues. But if you have any specific question related to troubleshooting, I am more than happy to answer that. Uh, what is the best portal to apply for DevOps job according to you? So Garvit, I will not say a best portal. Most of the time I focus on LinkedIn, but even in LinkedIn, if you apply for a specific job, you might not get a reply. So I will always go by the referral. So if you're applying, for example, Facebook, if you know someone in Facebook, that will be a much shorter and quicker path rather than applying via these portals. So try to, if you know someone, or the other thing I used to do is like try to filter it out. Like, I mean, I don't know if it's the right way, but I think it's the right way. Is like look at who is the HR in those companies and try to send them a friend request. And then, I mean, if you go by the referral route, also they are going to forward the resume to the HR or to the hiring team, right? So I just want to try to cut those hops. So try to send them a LinkedIn request. Don't send them a blunt LinkedIn request, like just send it. Try to give them some proper description. Nowadays, we have Chat GPT, which will give you like a lot and lot of uh, pre pre-based template which you can write, and try to give them the nice description that you are looking for this job, that is your strength, and apply for those positions. Ishfaq has, will DevOps role survive in the AIA? Should I switch to the field like MLOps? Ishfaq, if I'm in your position, I will definitely say yes. I mean, these are the future, definitely for sure. I will not say that DevOps role is going to be eliminated or it's going to vaporize soon, because at the end of the day, even if it's ML ops or any kind of ops or any kind of a buzzword, they will come up in future. End of the day, everything is going to run on the infrastructure. So they always need someone who's going to manage the infrastructure. But I will say, if in case if you want to learn, definitely learn those ML ops things, especially all these new technologies which are coming, or Chat GPT, GPT-4, all these models. Definitely. Any other question? Or yeah, most of the time I see like people say that give the project scenario or all those scenario. So to be honest with you, most of the things which has been floating around in the internet, they are just a hello world kind of a scenario. And definitely when you're going to deploy something in production, those are not hello world, right? So those are much complex scenario. Like rather than deploying a one line of a code, it's pretty complex. So just to be aware, and unfortunately there is not a good answer for that. Most of the things you are going to learn on the job, and I know it's a catch 22 for to learn something, you need a job. So, Vikash, uh, that's what I said that DevOps is not mainly for fresher, but if you know about these things will, I mean, this book will definitely help you. I just don't want to give you some false hope just to sell this book. But I mean, you need some knowledge on those topics before reading this book. So, fresher, that's what I said. DevOps position is not for fresher, but if, for example, if you know about something about Linux, yes, this book will definitely help you. That's what most of the topics that I have covered is not related to what is Linux or what is this. Mostly is related to, for example, if you know ls command, it goes into more in depth of that command. So, for example, when you run that particular command, how the system call works behind the scene. Or the simple question is, what will happen when you type www.google.com on browser? So, what are the series of steps which happen behind the scene, rather than just saying that okay, this thing happened. So this book at least give you some kind of a like a, you will able to at least picture that thing, like how these things work behind under the hood. So if you have a knowledge about those technology, definitely this book will help you. Any other question? We still have 8 minutes left. I question, I faced that PVC is unable to bind. They were asking to troubleshoot steps. Yeah, Jadip. I mean, I hate when people ask these kind of a question, because this is definitely something which if you have faced, you know the answer. If you do not face these kind of a problem, you don't know the answer, right? So yeah, I mean, if PVC is not binding, it can be a n number of things, right? It can be the storage class that you have defined is not correct, or for example, in case of a EKS, EKS, for example, by default goes to the EBS class where it's going to get the volume out of you. So you can see all those errors in kubectl logs or kubectl describe, right? So this is how you're going to approach. But again, that I have mentioned that if you are managing like a big cluster, there is no way you can log into each and every containers and you are able to find it out like what is going on behind the scene. So in those cases, you find some kind of a logging mechanism in place to see why your pod is not able to bind to that particular PV or PVC, all those things. So these are the things which you can do. If I have two options, one is to go with the role of cloud support engineer or DevOps engineer, which should I choose? So it again depend. In cloud support engineering, I mean, it's depend upon your expertise, Ishfaq. There's no one single answer. If I'm good at Linux, yes, I should go with the cloud support engineering role. For DevOps engineers, again, it depends. So, for example, if you look at the AWS definition of DevOps, they means the CI/CD pipeline, or the most of the world they know. And uh, I used to work on this AWS DevOps pipeline, and to be honest, it's pretty horrible. It's a one product which AWS is not paying much attention. Like they have the code commit, code pipeline, and all those things. So again, it's depend upon your expertise, or it's depend upon which how you are looking at your career. So I mean, if you look, ask me personally, Linux is something which I have started like way back in 2005. So I still love it, and I still love to debug all these issues. But at the same time, the way the world is going around. So, for example, DevOps is one thing, but even in DevOps, if you are looking at all those pipeline, most of the people nowadays they are building the machine learning pipelines, right? So they are using SageMaker. They have the SageMaker studios and all those things. So again, I mean, there's no one good answer. It's all depend upon like how exactly you want to build your career. Any other question? And again, I mean, it's not the end of the world. If you have any other question, please feel free to ping me on LinkedIn. Unfortunately, I'm getting too many requests over there, so I might be delayed, but I will definitely get back to you. If you have any question related to book or any other DevOps related thing, I'm more than happy to help you guys. Okay, let's stop the recording here.